In the last two chapters, we covered conditional statements. And now we will learn looping and how it works while working with stored procedures and anonymous blocks. We will start with for loops and practice everything related to counter-based for loop as well as cursor-based for loop, including its overall SQL construct and other limitations. We will not just learn the SQL construct, but also take different examples and understand how to debug in case of syntax error, kind of error messages thrown when we execute incorrect for loop blocks while building stored procedures using Snowflake SQL scripting. So stay tuned until the end of this video to gain a comprehensive understanding while working with for loops in Snowflake. We have already covered many important concepts in this playlist. If you haven't seen these chapters yet, please watch it after completing this video. The link for all the videos are available in the description section below. Alternatively, you can also visit my Medium blog pages, sample SQL script and links for each chapter along with summary. This chapter will concentrate on for loops concept in the context of Snowflake stored procedures and anonymous block and cover the topic listed here. There are other kind of loops that will be covered in the future chapters. So welcome back to my channel Data Engineering Simplified. I will be using the free trial enterprise edition of Snowflake on AWS for this video. For optimal video clarity, ensure that you are watching this video in its highest resolution. If you wish, you can also speed up playback rate to 1.25x or 1.5x to learn faster. For discussing specific SQL challenges or any other feedback, you can connect with me in two simple ways. Send a direct message on my Instagram or join my exclusive Facebook group. And yes, if you are a dedicated Snowflake professional looking to enhance your skill in more structured manner, explore my premium Udemy courses to conquer your fear. So let's jump to our Snowsite web UI and see all of them in action. So I am in my Snowsite web UI and this is my first worksheet called 01 loop construct. So let's start with anonymous block as shown here. This is my declared section where I'm declaring three different variables. The first is start at, which is number 1. Then I have second variable called end at and then a return message. And the primary purpose of this anonymous block is to print from 1 to 20. Now, if you look into the line number 12 to line number 14, this is my for loop. And if you look into the construct, it looks very similar to any other for loop construct like a Python or a Java. However, there are minor differences and that we are going to discuss. So we have to start with for keyword and then we have this local variable which will be automatically defined by Snowflake. Then we have to use this in keyword and then I can give the start at followed by two keyword end at and then do keyword. Now this two variable I can have a fixed value or it can be a variable. Then inside this for body you can have one or multiple expression, but each expression should end with a semicolon, else it will complain, and we have seen this in the past. Now finally we have to make sure that we use end for semicolon keyword to end the for loop. This is how a simple for loop looks like. So let's execute this anonymous block and validate the result. So when it printed the result, it included the start and end part, which is part of this. Okay, in some of the programming languages, it does not print endpoint, it only prints, up to 19. Okay, so this we have to remember when we are working with for loop. In Snowflake scripting, it includes your start at and end at variable. Now I can also hardcode start from 5 and end with 15. And let's see what does it return. So I got from 5 to 15. Now what happens if I do not have any expression within my for block? Let's see what happens. So it says that syntax error unexpected end. So it's expecting minimum one expression inside this for and end for block. So you can use uppercase and lowercase. However, it is recommended to have uppercase for all the keyword as far as Snowflake scripting is concerned. And if you notice, Snowsite is also highlighting those keywords with a blue color. So you know that these are the keyword. However, return is not highlighted. So Snowsite still has some flaw. So we have worked with anonymous block. If I want to really run it through the stored procedures, let me execute it. So this is my body starting from line number 29 to line number 38, and this is my create or replace, and let me create. So my print numbers sp successfully created, and if I have to run that, I can use the call keyword followed by the stored procedure name. So I got exactly the same result. Looks good. Whenever you are writing a stored procedure, make sure that this return matches with this return data type, else you will have an error. Okay, and let me show that. So let's say I define it int. This got created. So during the compilation time, no issues. But when I try to call this stored procedure, so it says uncaught exception, expression type error. So this item is not recognized as a numeric value. Okay. So remember that you match the data type of your return specification matches with return keyword here. Now, sometime I want to pass this value as an input parameter. If I have to do that, now I am creating a stored proc where it is taking one input parameter, and this input parameter is defining the length of my for loop. So it got created, and let me call by giving number 10, and it should print from 1 to 10. So this is how you can use input parameter, and that input parameter can also be, referring from this for loop to this. So this is possible. Now, sometime you might be doing the development using Snowflake's old legacy web UI, which will slowly deprecate it, or you want to use the SnowSQL CLI. In that case, you have to make sure that entire body is enclosed with double dollar sign. So this is the body which we have used in our Snow site. We did not have this enclosed double dollar character. But if you are running it from the SnowSQL, you need to make sure that you use double dollar. So let me copy this and go back to SnowSQL. So I switch back to my schema, and now let me copy paste that content. So technically it should work. Let me show you what happens. Okay, so it ended with an error, and if I enclosed everything with double dollar sign, let's see what happens. So if you look into this, I use this keyword called execute immediate, which we will cover later part of this playlist, and then I enclosed everything with double dollar and I executed that, right? And this we have covered in detail in our first chapter of this playlist. Now let's work on slightly complex use case where we are trying to print even number or odd number kind of a use case. Again, this declaration block looks exactly same. And if you look into the line number 73, so here is my for loop, which is start with your number 1 and ends with number 2. And here I have defined another variable which will perform this expression I percentage 2. So if there is a remainder value, then this remainder value will be stored here. And if the remainder value is equals to 0, it means it is an even number, else it is not an even number. So here I end my if condition, and then I end my loop, and finally it returns a value. So let me execute and show how does it look like. So if you see 2, 4, 6, 8 up to 20. So you can use the for loop to solve different problems. So we have covered the counter based for loop. Later part of this video will show you cursor based for loop and will be used very frequently during your project execution. This is my second worksheet, and in this part we are going to make some changes to this anonymous block which has this for loop, and try to see what kind of exceptions or error messages are thrown if we alter some of the keyword. We have already seen if you do not have any statement or expression within your for body, then it will throw an error. Now what if I just remove this for keyword, and let's say what kind of error does it throw? So it says unexpected semicolon line 11, and this is my line 11 where it is complaining. It means there is something wrong here, and obviously we can go and put the for keyword back and it will start working. What if we remove this semicolon or this semicolon? Let's see what does it complain. So let me start with this first. So again, it says unexpected end, line number 11. And when I see line number 11, this is primarily my line number 11. So now let me put it back and let me remove this. Now again it says line number 12 and end, and let's see what is the line number 12. So this is the line number 12. So this is a very simple for loop. If you are working on a very complex for loop, and if you mistakenly forget to give a semicolon at the end of each of this expression or executable statement, then it is really hard to debug a complex big stored procedure. So now let's remove one of the pipe sign, and this is a syntax error, and let's see. So I have removed the pipe sign from here, and it is a one single pipe sign which is not a valid statement, and let's see how does it behave. So it says unsupported feature, and it does not say where exactly this pipe sign is removed. So when you are working on a stored procedures, better use some kind of editor like VS Code and integrate your VS Code with Snowflake to make sure that you are able to pinpoint the exact problem. Otherwise, it is little hard because Snowsite is still not a very mature platform to build a complex and lengthy stored procedures. Now, what if I remove this in statement, and let's see what happens. I have to put this pipe back. And now let's say I do not know where the mistake is, and let me re-execute this. So here it says unexpected start at. So obviously it is pointing to the right line. You have to be more familiar with Snowflake scripting grammar to make sure that you catch these errors easily. Otherwise it would be challenging and time consuming. Now let's talk about do versus loop keyword, and this is my third worksheet called 03 do versus loop. And if you look into my first anonymous block, which is using my for followed by do, and then here I have end for. If you look into my another anonymous block, instead of using this do keyword, it is using a loop keyword, and here it is ending with loop. Okay, so if you compare this line versus that line, they are actually doing the same thing. However, the keyword here are different. So we have already seen the behavior of this. Let me re-execute it. So here I got 1 to 20, and if I execute this, so if I execute this version, this also works. What happens if I change this from loop to for? Let's see. So it says syntax error, unexpected for. So if you are not familiar with a loop keyword, which is a replacement of this do keyword, you also have to replace this for keyword when you are ending the loop. And sometimes this error message is misleading because you may think, oh, I am already using a for keyword and this is a for loop. So why this is complaining? Just because of this. And another important observation is that right now with this version of Snowsite, this is not highlighted, but this loop keyword is highlighted. So it depends on you whether you prefer to use do or you prefer to use loop. However, if you are building a lot of stored procedures, make sure that you follow a consistent approach, either to use do or a loop. So let's understand how to use the reverse keyword with this new worksheet called 04 reverse. So again, I am going back to my same anonymous block, and this is the declaration section. And if you look into this for loop here, right after this in keyword, I have used a word called reverse. And let me first show you what does it do. So if you look into the result, it starts with 20 and it ends at end. Okay. So here, the moment I use the reverse keyword, it started actually from this end number and reach to the start number, and that's what is being printed. So you might have a use case where you have to start the counter from the end and come back to the starting point. In that case, you can use the reverse. We would also try to use this word in our cursor based loop and see whether it works or not. Now let's learn how to use continue or break expressions when using a for loop. Again, when you are looping, it is possible that we have to skip something or we have to break the loop. In that case, these two keywords are very handy. So in the first example, again, this is my anonymous block, and here this anonymous block is running starting from number 1 to 20. Here first it is constructing the message by concatenating this I value to this empty string, and if my I value is greater than 15, and let's say I have this kind of a requirement where I have to break the loop and I don't have to print anything after 15. If that is the case, I can give this break expression along with the semicolon, and it should break this entire loop the moment this condition is satisfied. So this example shows two things: how you can use a break statement and how you can use a nested block within the for loop. So let me execute this block for you. So if you look into the result start with 1 and end at 16, because this statement is already printed, and then 16 is greater than 15, and that's why the loop broke at this point. Looks good. So if you look into this example where I made a minor modification where this statement is coming after this if block. So while running this loop, it will try to compare if I is greater than 15 or not. If it is not, then this line will be executed and it will continue to concatenate the I value. But the moment it will touch the number 15, this will continue, in the sense it will not break the loop. However, it will never reach to this line. So the moment continue comes, what happens? It will skip all those part and simply come to this point and re-execute this loop. Let me execute the anonymous block and show you the result. So here, last time we got 16 printed, but this time we have not got the 16 printed because I becomes 16, this expression returned true, and when this expression returned true, this continue block did not reach to this line and it directly jumped to the end of the for loop and it continue for the next I, and all the next I instance is obviously greater than 15, and that's why it worked. You may have a question, can I change the value of I? Let's try that and see that scenario. So what if I try to put this expression saying that I assign a -1 value where I is already available here? Let's see what happens. So it clearly says assignment to variable I is not permitted. Okay. So since I is explicitly defined by Snowflake scripting while constructing the for loop, if you try to reassign the value I inside the for loop, this is not permitted. Now, is it possible that I can define another variable called I? So let me use the let keyword. So if you look, I have defined a local variable called let within my begin block, and this variable name matches with this explicit variable here, and let's see what happens. So let me execute this anonymous block. So it got executed without any issue. Now let me show you one interesting scenario where I'm going to execute a SQL statement, and let's see how does it come up. So I would use, so if this is my statement which is using execute immediate, select from this value I, and I am constructing this select statement dynamically, and we would try to understand two things. If I put this entire statement as a part of SQL block stored procedure, let's see what happens. Let me quickly add the stored proc creation block. So to make this anonymous block as a stored procedures, I have added this create or replace stored proc, and the name I have given is called my_sp_02, and my return type is text, which is true, language is SQL. Okay, now let me first create this stored proc. So it got created. Now let's call it. So it printed 1 to 15, looks good. And if I go to the query activity screen, let's see how does it look like. So when I come to the query history screen, I can see this is the entry for the calling the stored procedures, and all the select statement is actually executed from this point to this point, right? And each of these executions are registered as a separate query ID. Okay, so whatever SQL statement you are running as a part of your stored procedures or a part of your loop within the stored procedures, this is how it will appear on the screen. So this is how the break and continue block works, and we have seen some other scenarios. What happens if I try to change the value of I inside the for loop where I is already used as a counter variable, but I can define the I as a local variable. In this part of this video, we'll try to understand the concept of label when it comes to for loop. So I am defining a stored procedure called loop with label_sp. This is my variable declaration block, and this is my begin block. And if you look into this begin block, so this is my start and this is my end, and I'm running the loop between 1 to 5. And what I'm doing, this is again, I'm printing the message as we have seen earlier. So this is my first loop, which I can call outer loop, and this is my inner loop. And this inner loop, I can associate a name or a label to this loop called inner loop, and outer loop, I can associate a name called outer loop. You can give any name of your choice. But when I try to say break this loop and go to the outer loop, then what would happen? It will simply go to this loop, which is the default behavior of break. However, if you have a different kind of a block and you want to directly jump from that point to other point, you can use this label to tell your logic that please move to this particular point when I apply break or continue. So if you try to see the condition, so outer loop start with 1, goes up to 5. Inner loop also start with 1, goes up to 5. And in this line number 16, we have a condition. If inner loop value is 1 and outer loop value is 3, then simply break the loop and go to the outer. And here we are actually concatenating the message I multiplied by j. And if I run that, you would be able to understand what it is doing. So let me create the stored proc first. So my stored proc created successfully. So if you look, 1 followed by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2 followed by 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and 3 after that it followed the break loop. And if I show you what is happening here, so this is nothing but your I, which is this number, okay, and then it is starting opening up a bracket here, this number, then it is running an inside loop which again start with 1 to 5, and then this entire statement is printed. So far, we have used a counter-based for loop. In this part of this video, we are going to see cursor-based for loop. So this is my 7th worksheet. And before I run this anonymous block, let me explain what's happening here. So I am using execute immediate statement to create a temporary table called cells, which has order ID and order value. And in the next line, this execute immediate will insert total 5 record in this cells order table, where it is inserting order ID and the order value. Now this item is executed and we will see how does it look like in our query profile screen. And then I am creating a local variable called cells cursor, and the cursor is covered later part of this playlist. So we will not spend too much of time how this cursor syntax looks like, but for now this is the let keyword followed by the name of the variable which is of type cursor. And the moment when I'm defining a cursor, I have to associate a select statement along with this cursor. Now my cursor is defined, and what this cursor will do, this will hold the result of this select statement, which is nothing but total 1 to total 5 order values. Now I am defining a total sales values. The primary purpose of this anonymous block is to calculate total sales. This is my for statement, and if you look into the for statement, this is the record which we used earlier with value I, and I am having this keyword in and then do, and instead of using start and end, I am using sales cursor, which is nothing but this cursor. And if you look into this for loop, this look more like iterating a list and starting from the index 1 and going until index n, and once the index n is done, the loop ends. Okay, so this is how it happens. And if I come back to this syntax, here I have one extra keyword called to in a counter based loop, and in a cursor based loop I do not have any to keyword because this is just a single list. Now let's execute this anonymous block, and since I am creating a temporary table, make sure my database and schema is selected and my warehouse is also selected. I got the total sales value of 652, which is nothing but a summation of this. Looks good. Now if I open a query profile, and if you see this query activity screen, here this is the set of statement executed as a part of stored procedures. So here it is a create or replace temp table, then inserting the value, then selecting the value, and then finally this declare is executed, and finally this anonymous block is executed. So by looking at this set of block, it is hard for you to know whether it is a part of a stored procedure or not, and this we have seen in our previous chapters. Now this is my another example. So in this example, we are calculating two things. We are calculating the total sales and we are also calculating the average sales value. So if you look here, I am creating temporary table, inserting the data in temporary table. I am opening a cursor, and if you look into the line number 38, I am actually creating the total count based on this select count from the sales table. Okay. and this for loop is calculating the total sales, which I can easily do with some built-in function, but I just wanted to show you how we can use the loop here. And then I am defining a new variable called let followed by average sales value, and with this expression I am calculating the average value and finally printing the value. Let me run this anonymous block, and this is my result: total sales values and average sales values. Now let's try to use the reverse keyword and see whether my cursor can start from the end and come back to the first record. So this is my reverse keyword, which we have seen in this example with my counter based for loop, and let's try to see whether it really runs in my cursor based for loop or not. So let me select this and execute the anonymous block. So it ends with a syntax error, and this is not super clear what it is trying to do, but it says line number 11. So this is the line number 11, okay? And if I see here, this is right after the in, I have this word. So I have changed this to uppercase. Let's see if it fixes the problem or not. No, this doesn't fix the problem. However, if I remove this thing and try to re-execute this, so it worked. It means the reverse keyword is not applicable for a cursor based loop. Now let's see an interesting use case of for loop where we are going to create SQL statement. And again, this is a very hypothetical scenario where I'm trying to create drop statement based on certain condition. And this is my stored procedures called create underscore drop underscore stmt underscore sp. And let me explain what this code is doing. So this will run a show command and list all the tables inside a database, which is in this case chapter 12. And now once this query is executed, it is primarily creating a cursor object, which is nothing but a list. And here it is using this result scan without specifying the query ID. And this query ID is nothing but this query ID. And it will fetch the name of the table, name of the database, name of the schema, what kind of table it is, whether it is transient or permanent table, what is the retention duration, and ordered by created date. Once it is done, here I am running a for loop which operates on this cursor, and it will fetch the necessary information, the table name, database name, schema name, and what kind of table it is, and what is the retention duration. If the type of table is table, and if the retention duration is more than 1, then it will continue, else it will write a drop statement along with a fully qualified name. So I am going to create two temporary table named T1, T2. I am going to create two transient table T3, T4. Then I am going to create a permanent table with a default time travel feature. I am going to create table 5 with, and then setting the time travel feature value 5, then table 6, 7, 8, and for table 8 I am setting the time travel value equals to 9. Then I am creating table 9 and table 10. So many tables are created, and my condition says if my table type is a standard table and time travel is greater than 5, do not drop those table but drop all other tables. So effectively this table will not be dropped and table 8 will not be dropped. All other table will be dropped. Let me first create this table quickly. So all the 10 tables got created successfully. Now if I run show tables, let's see what result does it bring. So if you look, it is table name, database name, schema name, and the kind, a retention duration. For table 5 and table 8, my retention duration is 5 and 9. Okay. Now if I run the select star from table function followed by result scan, it the previous query. Now let me create this stored procedures. My tables are already created. So my stored procedure got created. Let me call this stored procedure. So if I click on this, now I can see all the drop statements are created based on this condition, and wherever the table type is table and retention duration is greater than 1, it simply skipped this particular statement. So there are a variety of use cases where you can run this for loop condition, whether it is a counter based or a cursor based, and you can really have a lot of automation for your administrative task or a cleanup task or many other things. So we simulated a variety of scenarios to reinforce our learning and got a deeper understanding of for loops while building stored procedures or writing anonymous blog with the help of Snowflake SQL scripting. We also understood Snowflake scripting engine's behavior and examined the type of messages thrown in case of syntax error as well as execution error, along with certain limitations. In the next chapter, we will discuss other type of looping supported by Snowflake SQL scripting. So be sure not to miss the upcoming chapter, which features a hands-on tutorial that is crucial for understanding how to write effective Snowflake SQL scripting. I hope you got something valuable from this video. If you did, please hit the like button. Your support not only recognizes the work behind this free content, but also helps others to discover this playlist. And if you think it can help someone else in your team, feel free to share. Thanks for watching, and let's spread the knowledge and growth together.